Today we're looking into some really interesting text excerpts you send over.
That's right.
Our mission, if you will, is to unpack this unfolding situation with a king. These two figures, Bidrup and Bonkim, and this idea of a royal tour that suddenly pops up.
Yeah, and we join the story right when the king is expecting Bidrup and Bonkim. You get the sense he's anticipating something, maybe demands or requests.
But that's not what happens, is it? Instead of asking for things, they suggest something.
They do. They propose this massive tour for the king, to travel the kingdom, find problems, fix them.
And crucially, they say this idea comes from a spirit, Moyna.
Moyna, exactly. They claim it's on Moyna's authority, which right away is quite a tactic.
Okay, let's dig into that opening. Using a spirit's name, that adds a layer, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It gives their suggestion instant weight. It potentially taps into the king's beliefs, or at least the court's, making it harder to just, brush
So
off.
sort of gives them cover, maybe?
Could be. And framing it as solving the kingdom's problems makes it sound noble, regardless of what they're really aiming for.
Right, and the king's reaction, it's not hesitant at all.
Not in the slightest. He's apparently thrilled. This is no problem. This is nothing to me. It's quite a quote.
Yeah, it really is. And then, boom, orders go out immediately. Prepare the journey. Months of prep, hundreds of soldiers.
And he says he's leaving tomorrow at first light.
Wow. That's incredibly fast for such a big undertaking supposedly inspired by a spirit. What's your read on that eagerness?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Is he genuinely passionate about fixing things?
Yeah.
Or maybe easily swayed?
Or maybe, just maybe, he wants an excuse to travel, to get away.
That's definitely a possibility. The scale and speed. It feels significant, whatever the reason.
But then, just as we're processing this huge royal plan, the perspective shifts.
Yes, we get this private conversation between Bidrup and Bonkem after they've spoken to the king, and it casts things in a very different light.
Bonkim says the real issue hasn't even been touched on. That immediately sets off alarm bells.
Exactly. The tour suddenly feels like maybe a distraction, a means to an end.
So what is this real issue, according to Bonkim?
It's the core question. Who's going to run the kingdom while the king is gone for months, potentially longer?
Ah, the power vacuum problem.
Precisely. Who holds the reins? And Bidrup seems, well, hesitant to bring it up. Understandably, perhaps. It's a delicate subject.
Challenging the king's plans, even implicitly asking who's in charge, risky. But Bonkim seems ready to push it.
He does. So they hatch a plan.
Right. They decide they'll go see the king in his chambers the next morning, lay out the governance issue.
But then we get this moment of dramatic irony, because we know their plan.
But before they can act on it, the king appears. He shows up before they even get a chance.
It's perfect timing, in a way. Or maybe? Maybe the king was thinking along the same line.
You think he might have anticipated this?
It's possible, because he asks them a question. He seems preoccupied, and he asks if they have any ideas about, well,
who will take responsibility for the kingdom while he's gone?
the very thing they were planning to ask him about just lands in their laps.
Incredible. And their private reaction, the text mentions this phrase. Without even asking, it's raining. But will there be a downpour?
They see the opening immediately, this huge opportunity.
And Bonkim's response is masterful, in a way, very carefully worded.
Extremely. He pleads ignorance, basically. Says he doesn't know anything about royal customs for, temporary rulers.
But
then he just happens to recall that Moyna, the spirit.
of course, Moyna again.
Moyna also apparently instructed that they, Bidrup and Bonkim, should not leave the kingdom. They must stay put.
How convenient. And the text adds that little detail. Bidrup gives Bonkim a knowing smile.
Yes. That smile says a lot, doesn't it? It strongly suggests this wasn't just a lucky break. This was likely part of their strategy all along.
Using the spirit's authority not just for the tour, but to lock themselves into position.
Exactly. Position themselves as the only logical choice, divinely ordained even, to stay behind. It's quite clever, assuming the king buys into Moyna.
Which apparently he does. Completely.
Without any hesitation mentioned in the text, he just declares that I have no worries, you will take responsibility for everything in the kingdom.
Just like that. Handing over the keys to the kingdom, essentially.
And the text emphasizes how utterly pleased Bidrup and Bonkim are. Overjoyed, even. They've got what they wanted without even having to make the awkward ask.
So, stepping back, what's the real significance here, this handover?
It's a massive shift of power. plain and simple. You have the king leaving with all the pomp and circumstance, the soldiers, the symbols of his rule,
Off on this grand tour.
while Bidrup and Bonkim remain in the palace, quietly holding all the actual governing authority. It's a stark contrast. The appearance versus the reality of power.
Which leaves us with some really big questions hanging in the air.
Definitely. What is the king actually thinking? Is he naive? Is he being manipulated?
The text itself questions if his behavior is, quote, normal. His ready acceptance of everything, the spirit messenger.
Does he have his own reasons for wanting this tour so badly that he'll accept any arrangement? Did he even believe in Moyna, or is that just convenient for everyone?
Was Moyna even real, or just a fabrication by Bidrup and Bonkim?
We don't get clear answers from these excerpts. The king's motives, his intelligence, his awareness, it's all ambiguous.
Is he playing a longer game we can't see yet?
That's a possibility we have to consider. Or is he simply relieved to delegate, weary of ruling? The sources leave it open.
So, wrapping up where we are now, power has effectively transferred, maybe temporarily, maybe not.
Yes, Bidrup and Bonkim are in charge thanks to this spirit-guided suggestion for a tour and the convenient instruction for them to stay.
All facilitated by a king who asks seemingly few questions.
The central mystery remains the king, manipulated victim, willing participant, or something else entirely. What does this mean for the kingdom?
And what happens when or if he comes back?
Exactly. The implications are huge.
It really makes you wonder, could this seemingly simple acceptance by the king actually be a calculated move itself? Is there a layer we're completely missing based on these texts alone?
A very provocative thought to leave things on. Is there a deeper strategy unfolding here that we just haven't seen yet?
Something for us all to think about. Thanks for exploring this with us today on The Deep Dive.